live HAPS TV app. We are so pleased to be joined tonight by Andy Ruff. He is the Democratic congressional candidate in Indiana's 9th Congressional District. This will be the first of several interviews that we do in the final 5 weeks of this election campaign ending on November 3rd. Andy, it's so good to have you on the program.
It's good to be on the program. Shouldn't you do full disclosure and say the Indiana 9th Congressional District is your old home place?
Yes, I am partial to the Indiana 9th Congressional District. I did grow up in Bloomington, Indiana, and in further full disclosure, Andy's father, who I haven't seen in some 45 years, he was the pediatrician that I had when I was a little kid. So if anybody thinks that because of my memories of Andy's dad, which I don't really remember except I never got sick, that somehow has biased me, so be it. That's how we go. So Andy, the 9th Congressional District used to be known as the Bloody 9th because it was such a competitive Democratic-Republican district. Is it still that way?
Well, yes and no. It's been gerrymandered and changed so that it's dramatic. This district, so the boundaries have shifted significantly due to gerrymandering, but it still leans pretty strongly red today. Now, that's not always been true. 40 years ago, maybe even as recently as 40 years ago, and before that, it was a strongly blue district. It was a Democratic, a sort of a working class Democratic district.
Now, Andy, you are just self. Tell me a little bit about your progressive policies, where you form them, a little bit about your political background.
Okay, so I would call myself a Hoosier Progressive, right? And what that means is I apply sort of the classic Midwestern Hoosier values that ordinary Hoosiers have, whether they are conservative, whether they consider themselves Republican or Democrats, conservatives or liberals, sort of fundamental principles of sort of conservation when it comes to taking care of the land, taking care of neighbors, shared sense of responsibility in your community for the other members of your community. These kinds of fundamental, the work, respect for and appreciation of hard work and what you deserve if you work hard. For example, good wages. So why I say that is these progressive ideals and progressive principles that I stand for that are reflected in my policy platform, they are principles that are shared by ideas and beliefs and values that are shared by ordinary Hoosiers, regardless of whether they identify with a label Republican or Democrat. So these, ordinary Hoosiers think that everybody should get health care. That's been my experience in my entire life and in my experience on the campaign trail. They don't believe that families should not have access to good health care and not connected to the fortunes of their employment, right? They believe that.
Let me take you through some of the policy then questions, because a lot of people, when they hear progressive, they think Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren, and they've got some pretty clear, policy prescriptions. Medicare for all, $15 minimum wage, free college tuition. Tell us what sort of issues, where you agree with them and where you disagree with, say, the Bernie Sanders progressive that a lot of our national audience may be aware of.
Well, so I agree, but my point was, so do average ordinary Hoosiers. If you can get them away from these labels of liberal, conservative, Democrat, Republican, if you get them away from that, as I was saying before, they believe in Medicare for all. The majority does. I believe that firmly, and that's based on my direct experience as a lifetime Hoosier in the 9th District and a year of being out in the campaigning in the district and making the effort to specifically try to connect with those kinds of people that identify sort of more as Republican and conservative. They believe that, in a higher wage floor, they believe that if you work, you should earn a wage level high enough that you can stay out of poverty, provide for your family, and live with some dignity, right? So
And
these
the
ideas,
pushback,
like,
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. The pushback from conservatives, and I'll use the example, for example, of a college tuition, Indiana University, which is in Bloomington, Indiana, the heart of the congressional district, the 9th congressional district. There are some people who argue, a lot of conservatives who argue, that if a university like Indiana were to have, free college tuition paid for by the government, that the quality of the instruction at a place like IU would go down. How do you respond to that?
well, I don't even get that. I mean, I don't see where in any of the proposals admissions policies are dramatically affected. Why is it necessary that admissions policies be affected? I don't get that. But it's what I actually support it would be complicated and nuanced to work out an actual policy for what types of institutions I believe should have access paid for through publicly. So you said government pays for it. I don't agree with that. I say we all pay for it. Do we refer to our public school? Most people, I don't think of high schools, public school systems in Indiana as being paid for by the government. They see it as paid for by their community and by themselves, right? And so again, it's how you get people, it's how you frame it and how you get people thinking about it, that these same ordinary Hoosiers that are conservatives most would agree that the role that high school played for society and for the success of our society and our communities and individuals is similar now, what high school was 50 years ago, to what some level of college is now, right? And when you get people talking about that, and I find that the ordinary Hoosiers are far more progressive than the media tells us, than the media wants us to believe or think.
Andy, we're talking to Andy Ruff. He's the Democratic congressional candidate in Indiana's 9th congressional district, which is southern Indiana. And for those of you who are following us along on Twitter or Periscope or Haps or Facebook or YouTube, we're already starting to get a lot of conversations going here. We've got a lot of hellos to you, Andy, from Mark Goldman in Los Angeles. We've got a hello from Pablo. We've got a hello from Peter. We've got a hello from Teresa in Heber Springs, Arkansas. A couple questions coming in. Pablo asked, do you think that the GOP labeling everything as socialism hurts progressives?
Well, my real experience is no. And I have, like I say, I've been getting out, even in the pandemic, at every opportunity deep into the heart of the red conservative Republican 9th district here in Indiana to talk to people about these issues. And what I find is that the people that want to be dismissive of a candidate like me or of policies and platforms that are that they would deem socialist, or that the media or certain political leaders would deem socialist, those people are never going to be open to seeing things in a deeper, more thoughtful, broader perspective. They're gone. They're not going to be with me, regardless of what I call myself, right? And so the ones that I'm interested in, that we should all be interested in, are the thoughtful people out there who see themselves more as being identified in the Republican Party, or think of themselves as being socially conservative, but they are thoughtful enough to engage in discussion, to talk about finding common ground, to sort of understand that when a person says, I don't want socialized medicine, but take your hands off my Medicare, that's inconsistent, right? That's completely, hypocritical. That they're open to seeing that. And remember, it doesn't take all of the people that identify as conservative Republican to be open to voting differently at a given point in history, at a given point in time. It just takes like 1 out of every 15, and you will totally flip an election. And so I don't buy this that that there aren't enough, there's not a critical mass of thoughtful, old school, Main Street Republicans who identify as Republicans or conservatives, who are not just automatically going to be dismissive of someone because of a label, that they will listen and think, and they're thoughtful enough to be persuaded that there are times in history and there are points in time where we need, for whatever reason, whatever situation the country's in, our politics are at, the divisiveness we're at right now, the track we're on as a nation, that maybe they need to revisit in this election how they're going to vote, who they're going to support, and what they see as the most important things about a candidate. That loyalty to your community, to the ideas and values that you share in your area of, say, the 9th District in Indiana, are actually more important than loyalty to a label, loyalty to a party label.
Speaking of loyalty and divisiveness, there was the presidential debate last night that has been the lead political story in the U.S. political world. And by the way, if you've just joined us, we're talking with Andy Ruff. He's the Democratic congressional candidate in Indiana's 9th Congressional District. Andy, the debate last night was described between President Trump and Joe Biden as chaotic. Most polls suggested that Donald Trump's repeat interruptions turned off a lot of people. Joe Biden was not seen as particularly, he was seen as somewhat flat, but nonetheless, a lot of people are saying this was the most divisive, worst presidential debate we've had in U.S. history. I wonder if you want to speak to that and where you see the state of politics right now.
Well, I think I'm really encouraged by the indications that the majority of Americans reacted negatively to the divisiveness and the ugliness and the chaos and the absurdity of that debate, right? It's encouraging because, a lot of people say, well, it's just depressing. It's just sad for our country. It's embarrassing and sad and tragic for our nation, that's where we are. That's the state of our politics today. But I take a little bit different view. I take a more optimistic view. The fact that people saw in that debate a reflection of where we're at right now in this country and the path that we're on politically and civically in this country, the fact that debate turned them off and that it's a reflection of what it's like here in this country says to me that they're turned off by the politics of the country right now, and that we are off the rails and that it's not sustainable and that we do need to change dramatically for the sake of the future of our country. So that's encouraging to me that the majority of people look at that and don't say, yeah, stick it to that guy. That they're thinking, no, this is not right. This is not how our politics should be between two candidates in a presidential contest on a debate, or at our dinner table at home, or in our community, in our barbershops, in our workplaces. And to me, that's encouraging that the majority wants it to be different.
So you have been credited with providing an incredible amount of humor in your congressional race, and we're going to get to the video that you put together. You're a musician, you play the banjo, you put together a song about your opponent, Trey Hollingsworth. But before we get to that, Trey Hollingsworth, he is the Republican incumbent in Indiana's 9th Congressional District. He's been there since 2017. What do you see as the biggest issues that you have with Trey Hollingsworth?
So I don't know if people know the story of Trey Hollingsworth. I think if you Google some of the articles that were written in Indiana publications, his father's Joe Hollingsworth, a billionaire. Trey Hollingsworth he was born into just over the top, in my opinion, obscene wealth and privilege, with a silver spoon in his mouth. Graduated from Wharton Business School, and immediately his dad bought a company and installed Trey Hollingsworth put him in charge of that company. Trey Hollingsworth turns around and claims that's evidence of him being a successful small businessman, right? And So at some point, a few years later, there was an opening in the 9th District where the incumbent Republican Todd Young decided to run for Senate. So suddenly the seat had no incumbent. And out of nowhere, Trey Hollingsworth, with his dad creating a super PAC, and which is, as you know, is not supposed to coordinate directly with a candidate. In this case, the candidate, his son, they didn't coordinate. He spent almost $4 million in a southern Indiana congressional race and overwhelmed the Main Street Republicans, who were committed, good public servants in Indiana, Hoosiers, overwhelmed them with money and advertising and won the district. And to this day, he still has no real connection of any kind to Indiana. His family is from the Tennessee, Knoxville area. So my problems with him are primarily he has no commitment, no connection to Indiana, and he has no understanding. Oh, so yeah, and it's not I mean, a lot of people are not from a place, but they go there to that place. They put down roots. They become engaged in the community. They work with their neighbors and their community and protect the land and become a part of it. Trey Hollingsworth has never done any of those things, right? He's never done them. And that's the problem. We Hoosiers welcome people from other places to come and be a part of our communities and learn our traditions and cultures and embrace them and then maybe seek leadership, seek to be an elected representative of those people. But you could literally take Trey Hollingsworth and drop him down in virtually any congressional district in the United States, and he would have about as much connection with that district as he does the Indiana 9th Congressional District. And that's just not right. Okay.
Tennessee Trey, gonna send you back to Tennessee election day for the volunteer. Hills to the banks of the Ohio. Said I'm gonna buy the Indiana 9 8, Daddy gonna have the dough. Well, in Trey's first term, he can hardly wait to vote for the tax cut bill. It didn't give much to ordinary folks, but it gave Trey over $4 million. But you gotta cut something to pay for the rich folks' tax breaks. They ain't free. Well, have a plan to cut Medicare and Social Security.
Well, in the 9th District for a long time, so I was very well aware of Hollingsworth's opportunistic take of the 9th District of Indiana here, and I'm a songwriter and a singer. I'm a country musician. I'm a semi-professional singer, songwriter, musician, band leader, And I just, that's the idea for that song just came into my head one day, and I, kind of sketched out the verses and the chorus and wrote the music for it. And then when it became clear to me that we might not be getting out of this pandemic enough to allow normal campaigning, normal getting out, going to county fairs, going to festivals and communities, getting out and meeting people. When I realized that might not happen, I thought, I need to do some things to get my face, my name, and my politics, my positions out there. And I thought a good vehicle to do that would be to make a music video out of the song I'd written that explains my politics by contrasting them with using Hollingsworth's positions and votes and politics and background. And so I didn't want to sing a song about myself, right? People say, well, you should say your name more in the song. Like, I didn't want that. I'm a humble guy. I didn't want to sing a song about me. But I thought, I can convey this just as effectively, maybe more effectively, by using Hollingsworth and his record, his votes, and his background. So that's how that came to be.
Well, I'm getting so many comments from people who want to hear the entire thing. We're getting a hello from Brownsburg, Indiana, the 4th district there from Julia. We've got Peter saying, let's hear all of the music. So you know what we're going to do? Because we're on Haps and we can do what we want, I'm going to play the entire 3.5-minute video. Now, I'm going to have to do my settings just so we don't get feedback. So bear with me, everybody, one sec while I do this. And yes, you're going to hear the
From Charlestown up to Greenwood and over to Martinsville, Bloomington to Bedford, Seymour and Becksville, down to the river at Leavenworth and over through the Knobs to represent where we call home. Well, that's a Hoosier's job. COVID kills, but investments are Trey's priority. When he refers to working stiffs, he means it literally. He says, all you working people, well, there's no need to fear. Just wear big boy and big girl pants for your protective gear.
So anyway, I mean, has Trey Hollingsworth, has he responded? Have you heard anything about what his reaction was to this?
I would like to have been a fly on the wall when he first saw it. I'll tell you that much. Yeah, and that's me doing those quarry jumps too. So
now the quarries, anybody in southern Indiana will recognize those because those are the limestone quarries that a lot of Hoosiers near Bloomington and Bedford like to go swimming in, swimming holes. I wonder if Trey Hollingsworth recognizes that or not. But in any case, so have you met Trey Hollingsworth? Have you had any discussions with him?
I have never met the guy, and that's a problem that we here in the 9th District have with him. As the song says, we don't see him. The lyric is, we don't see him down on Main Street much here in our Hoosier towns, except for private meetings and photo ops. He's nowhere to be found. He'll come to the district sometimes with private selected meetings with certain other, like he'll meet with a handful of Chamber of Commerce people in a town and not allow the public. His town halls, his quote town halls, are not open to the public. And so his scarcity, his lack of presence, is a problem for us, and it has a real effect. For example, you can look this up. People can look this up. For the small business loans that came in the pandemic relief packages from the federal government for small businesses, the 9th District of Indiana got approximately half the number of small business loans of the other districts, of all the other districts in Indiana. And that's, I think, a reflection of the fact that he's not connected. He's not here. He's not listening to people. He's not connected to the communities to know what businesses, to help them access these relief funds. So the song's fun, but it's real. These are real issues that illustrate what the problems are and what the situation here is with our current representative.
And one of the situations, of course, that everybody is facing is COVID-19. How are the folks in southern Indiana doing? I know that there had been a spike in Bloomington. Some of the students came back. How are things going? And what do you see in terms of the government's response, how the federal government and members of Congress, the Trump administration, are doing with COVID-19?
Well, you mentioned the effect in Bloomington, and you may not know this, maybe you do, but it's for those who are in denial that this is real. Our mayor John Hamilton, he's Lee Hamilton's nephew, right? Yep. Lee Hamilton, the one of the longest serving representatives in the history of the country, congressional House members. Lee Hamilton used to represent the 9th District of Indiana for like 36 years or something. His nephew, John, is a friend of mine. He lives right down the street from me, as a matter of fact. His mother-in-law, his wife, well, the whole family got it. His wife was in.
We are having a little connection problem now with Andy Ruff. We'll see if we can get this back. It may have been this button that I pressed, which we're still getting used to the technology, folks. You got to bear with us here. On HAPS. By the way, if anybody wants to help support Andy, his website is andyruff.org. andyruff.org. Again, he's the Democratic congressional candidate in Indiana's 9th Congressional District. The story that he was going to say, I believe, was about Lee Hamilton, who was the longtime serving member of Congress in Indiana's 9th Congressional District. And that it's his, I believe it's his son or son-in-law, his son, who is the mayor of Bloomington. And COVID has spread through even the family. So one of the issues that a lot of people in Bloomington have had is, just like a lot of other states, Indiana has been very sort of dependent on the state trying to organize how it's going to get its COVID-19 supplies and deal with all of this. And Indiana has faced some problems in terms of having to compete against other Midwestern states for PPE, for the masks, for ventilators, et cetera, because every state has been on its own. So one of the complaints about how the federal government has done this is by kicking this to the states. It may be very wise politically for Donald Trump and the Trump administration to leave it to the states in case there are problems. But the backside of this is that when states are competing against each other, that drives up the prices for all these supplies that they're trying to get from all over the world. So that's been a big issue. We're having a little, again, connection problem here with Andy Ruff. We'll see if I can get him connected back. And if not, so be it. Again, you just saw the video that we played a few minutes ago of Andy Ruff's talking about Tennessee Trey Hollingsworth. Trey Hollingsworth is the incumbent Republican in this congressional district. He's originally from Tennessee. The allegation is that his father essentially bought a business for Trey Hollingsworth in Indiana, and several years later, Hollingsworth declares that he is now going to run for Congress in Indiana's 9th Congressional District and floods it with money back in 2016 and takes office in 2017. Hollingsworth, far more conservative than most Indiana Republicans, who tend to be a little bit more moderate. And that's why some progressives, many Democrats, feel that Andy Ruff actually has a pretty good chance in this congressional race, given the rather extreme position that they are able to describe with the incumbent Republican. And again, while it's a center to right-leaning congressional district, there has been a lot of excitement over Andy Ruff and a progressive who shares the sensibilities, but also the policies of Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren on sort of the national level in terms of Medicare for all, $15 minimum wage, free college tuition, goes on and on. He checks off all the progressive issues. Well, here's what we're going to do. We are going to end this broadcast because I'm just not having much luck here trying to get Andy Ruff back in. Well, you know what? Let's keep it open. I see that Pablo is here with us to try to bring us back in. And by the way, I'm just going to, while we're waiting to see if Andy somehow gets back, and I'm going to do a re-invite here. Okay. See if he gets back. I'm going to take some of the questions that some of you have asked yourself. And if you want to ask any questions about the debate, if you want to ask any questions about the state of politics, and so let's see. Pablo says we may need to host a debate here on Haps with David moderating. Well, you know what? One of the things we're going to do is, because I'm all about fairness, we're going to invite Trey Hollingsworth, the incumbent Republican, to actually come on and do a Haps interview. And then if Trey and Andy will both agree, we will have a debate, and we'll do it over Haps. And it's a great format. Let's see. Did Andy get a call? Well, it's possibly got a call. Maybe that was the interruption. But a couple other questions that people are asking. We have some folks who are asking me, what did you think of the debate last night? Well, debate. As I said on Quick Hits News, which is the show that we publish each day at 5 o'clock, and this is a roundtable of journalists who talk about the world of politics and what's happening in COVID-19 and all the other news of the day. What I thought is this was the worst presidential debate in modern American history for a couple of things. I don't have a problem with candidates taking shots at each other, being feisty, even sometimes calling each other names. But there were so many interruptions that it became literally impossible to have any substantive policy discussions to sort of flesh out what the disagreements really are on issues like healthcare and COVID-19 response and the economy. And because there were so many interruptions, because it got so out of control with the hectoring largely by Donald Trump, and Joe Biden, of course, he may have not have helped himself with some of the snide remarks like, can you please just shut up, man, or calling Donald Trump a racist, or some of the names that he used. But again, most people would say it was Donald Trump who literally destroyed the institution of presidential debates with what he did last night by not agreeing to the rules, but not agreeing that you get your 2 minutes, then the other person gets his 2 minutes uninterrupted. Because there were so many interruptions, it just went off the rails, and it was ugly. And I think, like so many Americans, and I've heard this from Republicans, even supporters of Donald Trump, who have said last night was not a good night for him. This comes from Rick Santorum, the former Republican senator from Pennsylvania, Chris Christie, the former governor of New Jersey, who actually advised Donald Trump, who said publicly this was too hot for Donald Trump. It was not a good night for him. And even some Republicans are talking about a down ballot problem now. They expect the poll numbers with Biden to widen. So even though Joe Biden, in my view, did not have the greatest debate and came across as a little bit flustered at times, and a little bit sort of all over the map and kind of flat. But that's the Joe Biden who many of us have seen in politics for years and years. He's not a great debater, but he didn't need to be a great debater because I think so much attention was taken away in a negative way by Donald Trump and how Donald Trump essentially ran the debate off the rails. So that's my view of things. And I challenge anybody who actually thinks that this was a good debate for American politics or American democracy to go ahead and weigh in because I would challenge you strongly on that. We're getting a lot of comments, of course, through our Twitter feed from why are Dems saying Trump should pay more income tax when they know full well he doesn't have a W-2? Look, it's an interesting question, but the fact of the matter is that there are people who are real estate developers in the United States who actually do pay more in income tax. So it's not about having a 1099 and a W-2. It's about a certain level of fairness. And the way our tax code is written now, and maybe this isn't Donald Trump's fault, but it's a lot easier for multimillionaires and billionaires to pay their accountants a lot of money to find every loophole and structure their investments in such a way so that they don't have to pay hardly any taxes. And keep in mind, President Trump, according to the New York Times and the tax returns, he didn't pay any income tax at all for 10 of 15 years, and was only in 2016 and 2017 when he paid $750. Given how much money he allegedly made, and look, I grant you that he paid taxes on his employees and he paid real estate taxes and all sorts of other taxes with his business, but still, in terms of his income tax, for Donald Trump, a so-called billionaire real estate developer, to pay less in income taxes than somebody who's a waitress or a teacher in Southern Indiana, to me that strikes me as strange. Let's see. Well, it looks like it doesn't seem like Andy Ruff is going to be back here, but that's okay. We had a good 30-minute conversation with Andy Ruff, the Democratic congressional candidate in Indiana's 9th congressional district. Again, for all of you who are interested about politics beyond just presidential politics, but Senate politics and politics in terms of Congress, Democrats, of course, they're convinced that they will be able to pick up and add to their 27-seat majority or 37-seat majority that they have in the House. And one of the pickups that they think they may be able to get is in Indiana's 9th congressional district, because Trey Hollingsworth is considered to be so conservative and far more conservative than the typical Indiana Republican, which is more like an Eisenhower style of Republican that most people may be familiar with in the Midwest. And that is somebody who doesn't necessarily believe that government is bad all the time and that there are services that government can provide. Trey Hollingsworth has been a little bit to the right of that. And again, for Indiana's 9th congressional district, which includes some liberal towns like Bloomington, Indiana, and other a college town in southern Indiana, and also the community, which has been trending more progressive, there was a sense that perhaps this is a district that Democrats can take back. Democrats have held this district over the last several decades, with exceptions here and there, because of Lee Hamilton, Democrat centrist, who held the seat for 30-some years. So this is a seat that Democrats think that they might be able to pick up. And Andy Ruff certainly has lit a fire under a lot of people simply because of that music video that we ran a short time ago, which has given him a lot of attention at a time when it's very difficult for candidates to go out and actually meet voters and shake hands. This is his way of getting his message across. I'm asked by one person, do you recognize the difference between socialism and adding a public option to Obamacare? Yeah, there is a difference. I don't see it as socialistic. Medicare is a government-run program. So are we saying that because we have Medicare right now that somehow we have socialism in the United States? I mean, we have the government that makes sure that our water is clean, that our roads are built according to certain specs so that they're safe, that we have automobiles and all sorts of other things that are built safely that the government regulates. To me, the idea that the government would provide an option for some people who can't afford private insurance, that doesn't strike me as socialism, although I get the political inclination by a lot of people on the right to go ahead and blame Democrats for embracing socialism because they want something that's government run. Well, if Republicans don't want anything that's government run, maybe they can figure out then how we're going to have roads and highways and schools and things like a response to COVID-19, which again, the government spent trillions of dollars dealing with the epidemic and trying to help people. Is that socialism? So anyway, there we go. We are going to leave it at that because we've been on now, almost 40 minutes. My thanks to Andy Ruff, Democratic congressional candidate in Indiana's 9th congressional district, former member of the city council in Bloomington. And yes, I do have family connections to Bloomington, Indiana. It's where I grew up and know the Ruff family and eager to get to know the Trey Hollingsworth family as well. So we'll invite Trey Hollingsworth, the Republican incumbent, and see if he wants to do one of these interviews. And then maybe we can get Andy and Trey to meet each other through HAPS and do some sort of debate. How many days until the election, folks? Let's see. 34 days until November the 3rd. I hope all of you who are living in places like North Carolina and Florida where you can start voting early, go ahead and start doing it if you like, or show up on election day. But good luck to everybody who's out there trying to figure out how to vote in this election. And remember, it's not just for president, it's also for Senate and for members of Congress. That'll do it for this edition of our special Quick Hits News broadcast over the Live Haps TV app. It's a great app for all my fellow journalists. It's easy. You create a profile and then you can have live conversations just like this. We're working out some of the kinks, but this is going to revolutionize how many of us are able to do live broadcast journalism. I'm David Schuster. That'll do it for this evening in Lebanon, Connecticut. Thanks for watching.